Hi, thanks for joining me. This is Angie at ChicnScratch, and this is the 10th and final video for the double slice layer cake quilt along. I've sewed all the rows together and the quilt top is finished. Now we have a couple other things that we need to do. So I'm going to open this up, and what you want to do next is you want to trim all these extra threads, because when you take it to the long arm quilter, it's just best to go ahead and have all those extra threads removed. While I'm also trimming the extra threads, I want to check for holes. So I'm going to come up here to this very first section. Let's see, where's the top of my quilt? I think I have it upside down. Let's see, here's the top of it. I usually keep a pin in the upper right left corner that always tells me where my top left of the quilt is. So what I'm going to do, you can either turn it over to the other side or you can just look. So I will tell you that probably 50% of the time I will end up finding a hole where I've missed a seam, and if I do that, I just take it back to the sewing machine and sew it, fix it. It's not that difficult, but you do want to make sure that you find that before you take it to the long arm quilter, because I did have that happen once several years ago, so I try to not ever make that mistake again. So again, I'm just checking for all these little extra threads and snipping them, and I'll stop doing that now and then we'll cover the next step. So once you snip all your threads, you want to measure it to figure out how much backing and binding fabric you need. So I've got my tape measure here, and I'm going to start at the upper left corner and place it right there at the edge. Okay, so it looks like this measures about 54 inches. So I'm going to write down 54, that's the width. And now we're going to measure the length. So I'm just going to start on this end piece here and go all the way down. Almost to the end. Okay, and it looks like it's about 63, between 63 and 64. I'm just going to say 63. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is get out my iPhone, and there is this wonderful app. Let me see if I can open it really quick. It is called Robert Kaufman the Quilter's Little Helper. You have to skip this ad, and then what you want to do is you want to click on backing and batting. Now my long arm quilter provides the batting, so I don't have to do the measurements for that because she does provide that. But I'm still going to click on that because we do need the backing measurements. So then the width of fabric, if you purchase it from the store, it's 43 inches. There are larger pieces of fabric, but most often I always buy the 43 inches. You'll know if you've bought the bigger. So the width, going back to my measurements here, it was 54. The length is 63. And then I'm going to put the overage at 2 inches and then press calculate. That tells me that I need 3 3/4 yards of fabric for my backing. So I'm going to write 3 3/4 for backing. Now I believe when we started the quilt along, I think I may have said 4 yards. 3 3/4 versus 4, that's very close. That's a 1/4 yard difference, and it really depends on your seam. So some sewing machines have a wider 1/4 inch seam and some have a larger, and I have multiple machines and I can tell you they are all different. Okay, so now we're going to go to the binding, and that's down here, We're going to put in the same measurements. Now your binding strips depend on your long arm quilter. Just ask the person that's going to be doing your quilt for you. Not everyone does the binding. My long arm quilter does, thank goodness. And she does a very thin binding. So my width of the binding is going to be 2 inches because, again, she does a very, very small binding strip. So we're going to enter in the width, which is 54 by 63, and she does do the bias binding. So I'm going to click on bias and then click calculate. And it says here that we need 1/3 of a yard for the binding. Now let me go back and see what the measurements are if we just did regular. Let's see, calculate. It's still 1/3 of a yard. So so when you go to the store, you want to buy 3 3/4 fabric for the backing and 1/3 of a yard for your binding. And preferably you want to make those 2 different patterns, but that they coordinate. So I went ahead and showed you guys my backing and binding fabric before we even started, so that's on there. So I guess, oh, one more thing you have to do. Before you take it to the long arm quilter, you want to make sure that you press it. So once I'm done fiddling with it, because right now while I'm snipping the thread still, it's going to continue to get wrinkled. So the final step before I take it to my long arm quilter is I will press it really good with starch, and then I will also print a label to put on my quilt. So it says Angie Kennedy, Judah, and ChicnScratch. Okay, so this wraps up the double slice layer cake quilt along. Thank you guys so much. If you want to participate in the next quilt along, join our Facebook group. It's ChicnScratch Quilt Along, and it is a group. Okay, have a great day. Thanks a lot. Bye.